What's up, you guys? It's Nick again, back with Game Dev with Nick, and we're gonna do a little bit of 3D modeling today, which is kind of a different thing than what we were doing before. I was making some Roblox videos before, and this sort of pertains to all game dev, is 3D modeling. And you can actually take your 3D models that you make here and put them into Roblox if you want to make some very peculiar shape that you couldn't make with the blocks and stuff like that. So that's how people do that, if you're wondering. And so today we're going to make a lobster. I also do Unity though, not just Roblox. I was just doing that's what this channel started out as, basically. So today we're going to be doing a lobster. And so for lobster, we're going to need, because they're symmetrical. If you cut them right down the middle, not that I'm saying you should do that, but if you do, they're delicious. But if you chop a lobster right down the middle, it's the same on both sides, depending on which way you chop it. So we're going to chop our object down the middle too, so that we only need to edit the vertices on one side, and it'll reflect it on the other side. So it kind of, the reason you should do that is because if you don't do that, it's actually really tough to make them exactly the same. And if you change something, you have to change twice as much. So the first thing we do is we hit A to select our object, then we go to edit mode. And then we're going to subdivide this. So you, let's see, whoops. So I just right click. I actually couldn't find where there's a new Blender user interface, which I can see that it's better and nicer, but I just don't know where subdivide is. So I just right click and do subdivide now. And then I'm going to hit B to select the square grabber guy and select just the vertices on one side. Then I'm going to hit X and delete the vertices. So you hit X to choose what to delete. We're deleting just the vertices to leave this kind of open hole thing. Then I'm going to hit A again to select them all again. And then I'm going to apply this modifier. And a modifier is one of these little guys under the wrench tool here. So you go over to modifier and you have to choose one. There's a lot of them, so don't get overwhelmed. That's actually a good thing. It means it's really powerful. But we want mirror, which is over here. Mirror is probably the one I use the most. And we want to reflect that over the red axis, which is the X axis. And we want to add clipping. We won't add clipping at first, just so we can see what happens. I'm doing something wrong. I think I need to choose the other. Yep, I was wrong. You have to choose the Y-axis. So it's actually, you have to choose the axis that it runs through, not the axis that it's hard to describe. But if you can't get it to show up like this, it's because you have checked the wrong box here, and you just kind of got to trial and error it until it works. So in my case, it's Y. If yours is red and green like mine, then yours is probably Y too. So now we can edit one, and it'll edit the other side. See that? So now we're going to basically build the lobster, half of the lobster here. So we're going to take things down, I think, a bit. Lobsters are a little bit flatter. But actually what we're going to be doing is we're going to be scaling it down on the Z-axis so I can squish both sides together. Or I could move the top and the bottom independently, but this way is just a little faster. Let's do it again with the B key to select our square, and then this time we're going to do G, and then on the axis Y. So you hit the key G, then you hit the key Y, and that's how you constrict it to the axis. And I always try to move my vertices constricted to an axis, because if you don't do that, I find myself making mistakes and things aren't lining up exactly right the way I want. But if I kind of stick to that rule of only moving things on an axis, it takes a little bit longer at first, but then I just find that it turns out better. I want to scale this down again, I think. Grab the bottom ones. Whoops. Hold the shift key to continue to grab after you've already grabbed a set of vertices. Then we can do the same thing. We can scale it on the z-axis. I don't really need to grab the middle ones. I'm realizing lobsters are pretty flat. Whoops. So I'm just trying to get those dimensions right. Because you want to kind of do it right at first. See what I'm saying? If you try to not do it constricted to an axis, you're going to make a mistake. So I just want to make it flatter. So scale on the z-axis is S, Z. Alright, now we have to get a little bit more complicated here, because lobsters are, I think what we're going to do is we're going to just do the body first, and then we'll like kind of extrude, it's called, off the legs and the claws and the tail. So that means we have to, let's see, let's make it more of like a shell. So we're going to G, Y. G is basically just move. It's basically transform. And we're just going to do the same thing to the bottom. And that's just creating more of like a three-dimensional shape to the lobster. And one thing I'm trying to do is just keep it as few pixels as possible. But a lobster is kind of tricky, the geometry and all that. So we're going to have to use more than... I made a sardine the other day, and the sardine, or the anchovy rather, was like 50 vertices after I brought it down. And it was really pixely, but it was definitely looking like an anchovy. And I was just thinking it's going to be this tiny little thing in the water. I don't need to use a lot of pixels for it. You won't be able to really see it. And I think if I spent a lot of pixels on an anchovy, people would be like, this is ridiculous. You should have spent pixels on the person that's running around. Alright, so a lobster kind of comes out with a head, and I'm not really too sure how detailed I want to go before I start doing the other stuff. I definitely want to get more detailed than this. So I think I'm going to start working specifically on the tail. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring the whole thing down into the middle. Oh, you know what? This is where we'll talk about clipping. So right here, I want to scale this whole thing down into the middle part. But as I do that, it's pulling away from itself, and you can see that the mesh has split. And we don't want that. So we're going to Control Z to undo what we just did. Then we're going to turn on clipping. I'm not sure. I think I need to highlight. I don't think I need to highlight it. We'll test it out right now. So now if I scale it again, it's going to scale around that center point, and it won't split. So that's what clipping is over here in your right. Turn on clipping. Alright, now we're going to do the same thing on the other side because I'm liking the way that turned out. Must be missing something, or let's see. No, that's right. So the tail's a little bit skinnier than the head. Okay, what else do we need for a lobster? I think what we'll do is I want to slide this edge up. There's actually an edge slide function. It's been a while. I haven't been able to find it on the new interface either. So I started doing something else. I realized I could just use the transform tool. And oh, here it is, edge slide. So we'll try the edge slide. It looks like I don't want to already have vertices set. Vertex slide, what's that? Is that what we want? No, that's the G tool. See, I just kind of quite something's missing from this with my mind right now. Just don't quite get it. So I've been using instead. That's why I constrain things to the 3 axes, because that way I can do G, X for the X-axis, and push this up, just like I was trying to do in the first place with edge slide. But I will have to figure that out because I have used edge slide for stuff in the past and it's super useful. Alright, the head is sort of more squished, and I'm thinking now's the time we're going to start to need more vertices, because if we squish it, it's going to squish too fast. We want the shell to kind of be big and bulky up until this point. So here's where we're going to add a loop. So loop cut, and it just adds those same amount of vertices. So it saves you time to do that. You could also subdivide. Excuse me. But I find this works well. And we're going to slide this over though. See, here's where I want edge slide, because I want it to slide down the same gradient. We must figure out edge slide. We must. Oh, okay, so if you have the vertices already highlighted, then you can just hit the left click button. That's, I think, easier than before. I can't remember how they did it before, but I like this a lot. I like this new system a lot. So we're going to bring it down to about here. Then now we can start working with these vertices and bringing this down. And I might even go all in right now and try to make... you know what, we'll pull this one out first. We're going to pull the middle vertice out by hitting G and then X, dragging it out on the X-axis. And then we're going to then we'll start playing with these. So I think I'm going to scale this down on the Y-axis first, and then I'm going to scale it on the Z-axis. But I think a lobster head is actually a little bit higher, so we're going to hit G and then Z, move it up. And then we're going to, that looks pretty good for now. One thing I like to do is hit F12 and just see how the rendering looks from the side. Is this looking lobster-like? You know, what does this not look like? Well, the back looks ridiculous. It doesn't look like a lobster. But does the head kind of, if I squint, look like a lobster head? Well, no. It's because it's still too fat, I think. Lobsters' bodies are skinnier. But instead of squishing all these vertices down, I'm going to actually highlight them all and pull them out by scaling it on the X-axis. Now I'm going to look at it again. You want to get the rough shape right early because it's easier that way. It's like sculpting. Alright, so the claws will come out of the bottom like that. And we want to remember, I'm trying to keep this very low vertice and just sort of a rough, which is sort of, I mean, it's obviously way easier than making an absurdly good lobster. But it's also, it's like sort of a tricky balancing act. What do you spend your vertices on? So one thing I see about the lobster is that he kind of gets fatter in the middle where his two big old legs are. So we're gonna slide this down because it kind of looks like the head unit is bigger when I'm looking at this picture from the top. So what's the edge slide key? Shift spacebar? I see. Alright, so yeah, and already I can see that's better. And this next one's going to be the beginning of the big boy chunk. So we have to slide this one down a bit too. So shift space. Shift 8, I guess. Oh, that's kind of annoying. And then let's see here. Pull this one back about, it's less than halfway. It's like that. Yep, okay. So the next thing we want to do is, I think we're going to add another section of vertices. So we're going to do another loop cut. And then we're going to edge slide the loop cut. Okay, so it's shift space 8. So you don't have to do shift space shift 8. That was wrong. Alright, bring this down. I think we'll shrink this in a little bit. So we're going to scale this towards the middle. I think we'll scale both towards the middle at the same time, though. Because we don't want to puff out the back. The back is skinnier than the middle. So scale Y. Then scale Z. We're not trying to scale in the X. Scale Y again. Again. Now if we unselect these, cursors annoying me. So we unselect these, then we select these. We can pull these in even more too. So a lobster tail is kind of flat. The whole lobster I feel like is kind of flat. Maybe I'll flatten. He's already kind of flat. So I know this doesn't quite look like a lobster yet, but it's starting to kind of take shape more than it was. And if we hit A, we're able to see down here how many vertices we're using. So far we're using 27, so we're doing pretty good. I want to keep that vertice count super low. Because if you're making a big game, you can't just be having a bunch of lobsters running around like crazy. Anyway. Alright, next thing we gotta do. We have to, well, we could make a kind of a tail-ish guy. Yeah, the tail will be good. We'll do the tail. So I'm going to do the tail like this. We're going to grab just the middle, and we're going to GX to extend it out along the X-axis, red axis. Okay, so here's one thing I haven't talked about. This took me a long time to figure out, and once I did, Blender became much, much better. This is how I control the camera. I use middle click and shift middle click, pretty much only. So when I'm rotating around the object to look at the different angles, that's middle click. And then when I need to move from that spot, I shift and middle click and I pan. I pan around. So if I want to get close to here, I'll shift. You know, you can kind of wiggle your way. You can zoom in, shift, and then drag over here. Shift, middle click. All right. Anyway, so the lobster tail kind of comes down like this. So I think we're going to extend this out a little bit more. And then we're going to, let's see, the lobster tail fans out instead of just being a point like this. It kind of has two splays that come out either side. So in this case, we're going to go to, for the first time, face mode. So up here in the upper left, I don't want to do this too fast because all the time I watch tutorials where people move too fast and you're like, where'd they click? So up here in the upper left, there's vertice mode, edge mode, and face mode. It changes the way it looks too, and I'll select one of each. So vertices, you have these little dots, you can select each dot. That's what we were working with. Then edge mode is, you can work with edges. I do this sometimes too. This is useful, and it's so easy to go back and forth that certain situations are better for other reasons. So this situation, face mode is good for this reason. I'm going to select this face and just delete it. Oh man, I might have deleted this edge. I didn't intend to do that, but that's alright. We'll fix that. So then I go back into vertice mode, and I want to recreate this edge. So I just select these two, and then I hit F. That's how you create a connection between two vertices. Just the F key. It's pretty simple. And then we're going to pull out the tail. I think one thing we're going to do is we're going to move this vertice right here, because it wouldn't be flat at this point. It would be more up. So we're just going to G, Z. And I just kind of want to finish up a basic tail. Super really simple tail. I don't want to go too nuts. So we're going to extrude these two. So extrusion is like, I think that's the word, extrusion. I've only heard it used. Extrude is when you grab you can grab a series of vertices and you hit the E key and then you drag the mouse and it pulls out like a face. And you can even do it with a ring of vertices and create like a pole like that. But we just want a face right now. So we're going to hit the E key and then we're just going to kind of pull it out the way we want. And oh man, you know what? Clipping might be bad. No, it's good. It's good. It's all good, baby. We're going to move this up on the Z. This is the one that's tricky. So sometimes in Blender I go rogue and I start just creating a line of vertices that I kind of want, just because. So I think in this case we're going to do that. I think I'm going to delete this one. We're going to go rogue, guys. We're going rogue. If I can't remember, I think it used to be just to be able to hit Control, but you can't do that anymore. I think you need to actually hit the E key like before, and you extrude a line. And the line's kind of snapped to this X-axis, so we can bring it around. What do we want? We want to move it up on the Z-axis. We want to move it on the X-axis. And then I wanted to connect these two. And then I wanted to connect these three. Make a triangle. And I wanted to fill in this face as well with the F key. You can fill in a face. F is not only used to fill in a edge, pop an edge together. You can fill in a face entirely if you have a loop of vertices. Let's just look at it and see what's going on. It's still looking like a lobster. Not really. I already see why though. It's because this vertice right here, it's too much of a box on top. It looks like a van and not a creature. So it's because of this vertice only, actually. It's actually not that huge a deal. We're going to, and that's the power of keeping your vertices simple in the beginning. Then G, I only need to move one vertice around, not a bunch. I'm just kind of turning it more into let's look at it again, more into like a submarine kind of looking shape. So this, I can see this line's all wrong. So this vertice, I think, needs to be moved up. That's all. So all we need to do is G, Z. So I want to look at that. Yeah, that looks a little better. The back one needs to be brought down. G, Z. Yeah, that's starting to look like what we're going for. This one is too far up, I just realized as well. So we're going to G, X. And then we're going to continue with our tail. I think we're going to extrude just this point. Sort of throw it out. It never goes in the right spot. And then I just move it along the coordinates. And I move it to where I want it. G, Z. Might be too high. It's hard to tell. Yeah, it is. G, Z down a little bit. And then G, X. I think that's about right for what we're going for. We're just getting the tail bigger. Maybe we'll just make it like this. See what it's kind of looking like a whale now. But yeah, like the tail kind of flattens out. but it's too pointy. That's the problem. And so it's worth it to spend a couple more vertices. It still doesn't really look like a lobster. And we got to do the bottom part too. Can't forget about that. Worth it to have the tail's kind of big though. It's about right size-wise. So I think we'll bring it apart now. We'll do E. Oh, you know what? Didn't think about that. So now clipping is screwing us up. I can't exactly remember. I think what we have to do is extrude this one away from the middle line. Like we need to move it to the... Oh, I can't do that. Interesting. That's very strange. Oh no, I think I can. Oh no, I really can't. So it's snapped. So if I extrude it from the middle one, it's snapped. And I don't want to turn off clipping. But what if I turn off clipping for a moment? It does what I want, but I'm worried that some other clipping is going to get messed up. Oh well. This is the perfect opportunity to learn what happens. So we're going to turn uncheck clipping over here so we're able to branch this off. That's all I did there. And the only reason we're doing that is because we want to create kind of like a kind of like an arc shape here. So we're gonna another good opportunity to show another trick. So we want to have these be on the same level, right? And they're not quite on the same level, but they're close. I approximated it, but I want them to be on exactly the same level as it pertains to the z-axis. So here's something you can do. You can do S to scale, and then Z to the z-axis, and then 0. So S, let me do it again. So S, Z, 0, and then left click to complete it. And now you can see they're on the same z-axis line. So that's how you do that. You can also do you can also scale it to 1, and you can use like all these different increments. But 0 is the way to make it make two vertices be on the exact same plane level. And then I'm gonna connect them. I'm gonna create a face. The face is tricky because if you look close, actually the geometry wouldn't make sense. So this is actually two triangles. After it like processes it and stuff, but it lets you work with it as if it was a face. It's sort of just to make your life easier. So what do we want to do with this? I want to bring it out the x-axis. And I want to move this one over so it's more clear. Maybe I'll move it down the x-axis. Or maybe we'll do the same trick, S, X, 0. It's hard to see whether they're actually on the same... I don't know. Anyway, is that looking like a lobster? Kind of. The thing is, we need these ridges here, and I don't want to use the vertices to do that, but I really have to. So I think I'm going to just have to suck it up. We're going to do another loop. Cut here. What? Loop, shift, space, 8. What's good? So now we have a new trick up our sleeve. So if I really want to do this right, I would have another loop, and I'd pull the other loop out and pull this one in and out and in and out and in, so it would make it look like it was, ribbed and there was geometry there. But I really don't want to do that. Because I just don't want to spend the vertices on that. And we already have a bunch more vertices than 27. We've added a lot. What I'm doing now is I'm just adding like a belly and a back, because right now he's flat, and they're not flat. I was just looking at a picture. SZ pulls out both sides. Let's look at it again. Yeah, so a lobster's more like a cylinder and less like a block, So that's why we're doing that. This vertex is too high. That's something that's, well, maybe, yeah, just a little bit too high. We'll bring it down a little bit. Not too much, though. Alright, this is looking too much like a fin, and not enough like a lobster. You just did something stupid. I created a vertex by accident. There's one too. Whoops. You don't want to do that. You do not want accidental vertices. That is bad news. Alright, let's look at that again. Yeah, that looks a little better. I don't want to get too much more complicated than this. We're going to leave it like that for now, but I need to complete it. Because if the player looks at the lobster from the bottom somehow, which they always figure out how to do stuff like, they'll always be annoyed at these little imperfections you leave. So although the lobster will be just, sifting stuff, bacteria or whatever on the ground, he's actually we're gonna need to complete this. And it won't be that bad. We're just gonna create a couple faces here. One here, and one, we're gonna unselect that one. One there. And this edge is maybe not necessary, I just realized. So we're going to delete this edge. And then we're going to well, I guess no. This does need to exist. Or it was connected to the wrong one before. That was wrong. Okay. So now we'll finish up. I guess we're going to do... This is a little trickier. So we'll do this face first. Yeah. We'll finish up. And there should be like two, or just one more, looks like. One more face. Cool, so now, yeah, now it's complete. That looks about right, actually. For a sea crustacean. And we're sort of, this was good what we did here. Well, the bottom part of the lobster I feel like isn't going to be looked at as much. So we have it all coming to one. We didn't have a bunch of vertices over here, detailing the bottom of. We may have to come back and do that, but essentially this is just, 5 or 6 vertices. And then on top, I think I can even collapse this down more. So we might do that later. I'm going to bring these two down. Alright, let's look again. Alright, very good. That's about a half an hour. We're going to continue in part 2 if you want to keep watching. And thanks so much, you guys. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing more game dev stuff, and not only in Roblox, but also in Unity and Blender, basically. And those are the 3 programs I'm going to be doing stuff with. Blender you can use for both developing in Unity and Roblox, and it's free and open source, and it's super cool. And it's old, it's stood the test of time. It's a great program. So this is Blender. I'll throw a link down in the description so you can download it too. And maybe I'll make a video of how to download it for people if people want that. And yeah, I'll see you guys in part 2.